podcast is hosted monthly by John Kenny, CEO of Cotney Consulting Group and one of our Incubator Program sponsors. The Incubator Program was designed to partner emerging companies in the construction sector with mentors who will guide them to success. We will cover go-to-market strategies, operations and controlled growth, scaling, and more. This information is from our Incubator Program's hands-on training. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're here for our fourth episode and our series of 6. And today we're going to be covering claim analytics to identify trends. So again, I'm happy to, and I'm John Kenny with Cotney Consulting Group. And again, I'm happy to welcome my guests back from Furman Insurance. Guys, how are you today?
Doing great, John. Doing good. Think we got a good topic today here.
Yeah, this one is definitely dear to my heart because I know every year when I was on the contracting side, this report was super valuable to really to me. And I know we're going to share. So we're going to share the screen here in a moment so you guys can see what we're talking about. But this is a great analytical report where you really can drill down on your performance. Where your hot spots are, where your good spots are, what you need to work on, and really understand how your company's performing from this side of it. You guys agree with that?
Absolutely, yes, sir. I would say in the beginning, as contractors are starting out, it may not be super impactful, but as companies grow and scale, it really helps to identify places where loss control can be invested in, or it's more of like an X-ray because most of the contractors that we meet with look at the insurance burdens like, we're just kind of beholden to the insurance company. We have no control over what those costs look like. And the reality is certainly there is an element of that, but there is another side where if there's, culture of accountability and there's strong disciplines in risk management and loss control, over time that will reduce the insurance burdens because the carriers will look at the contractors, okay, they're better in class from a loss control perspective. And these claims analytics help us to be able to illustrate that to the underwriting community.
Let me ask you a question. You did bring up a great point, especially if somebody is new, which is really what this series is geared toward, that the pioneer starting out as well as the veteran that's been listening in as well. But say I am a brand new business and I really don't have any history because we're starting out. Is there a way that and I don't know, and I'm not putting you on the spot because I didn't give you any advance notice on this question. So. But my question would be, would you be able to have something to say, okay, industry standard across the line, this is kind of where it falls, and this is where you seem to be now. So let's work on these areas. Is that a possibility?
I would say certainly we, just being in the industry as entrenched as we are, kind of put together not a full report card, but right. And certainly our opinion is subjective in nature. But we definitely are able to tell, like, hey, these policies are in place, this stuff's going well, this stuff maybe we could work on, this would make a really big impact to the underwriting community. So I wouldn't say there's any formalized approach to that information, but we are certainly able to make suggestions and see other things because over the course of our time as roofing industry insurance experts and our portfolio, we see what works, and inversely, we see what doesn't work.
There's no question from working in the roofing industry as we do that there's a benchmark that we have an understanding of where they should be compared to their peers, and try and share that with our clients, not anyone else specific and how they line up, but just simply an industry standard benchmark. Just like the EMR, like we were talking about last week. I mean, if you're at a 1.0, that's a very simple benchmark and indication with the EMR. 1.0 is the industry standard. And so better, you're doing better, worse, you're doing worse. So, but no question, John. Yeah, we do share with our clients where that benchmark should be.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know that's really important, especially if I was a new starting out. It's like if you don't know what you don't know, you don't have anything to shoot for. So that's great. And again, I apologize. I know I put you on the spot on that one, but that's the advantage of us doing these live. When we're recording them, we roll right along as things come out. So that's a great job. That's a good answer. That's what we wanted. Are you guys ready to share your screen? And we'll take a little walk through what one of these would look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I'm sharing the screen here, John, we have a client that says you can't manage what you can't measure. And it kind of goes to what you just said. You don't know what you don't know. And as companies grow and, they spin off a few different locations and they have, more vehicles than the 5 that can fit in their parking lot, and they have more employees across, maybe a couple different regions of a state or something, there's a little bit of control that's lost in that way. And this sample performance review we put together, whether it's on a quarterly basis or a biannually basis or just once a year, to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive on what claims look like from an auto, from a general liability and a work comp perspective, and say, these are where they're trending year over year. Here's what things are still open and can affect the insurance renewal period. And here's some areas, we do a little bit of a deeper dive in terms of what these claims actually look like. From a frequency and severity perspective, we can tell where the most frequent claims occur, what day they occur, and same with the most severe. And we do that for automobile, for general liability, and for workers' comp.
Anything we can help identify trends that we see that they should know about, even from other clients, trends in the industry. That's what these help us do as we present to each and every one of our clients.
No, that's great. And I know I always look forward to seeing these because it really gives you a perspective. And I think it's great you got a chance to share, and we kind of walk through one of these today a little bit.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll just pretend as if, John, you are our client and you are ABC Roofing or whatever company anonymously we used in here. I think that might be the easiest way to go about it.
That sounds good.
We'll take a 30,000-foot view of what we're looking at. From an auto perspective, this is what we call our yearly summary page. So what we do with this is not only tell our clients where they're trending year over year by policy term, but we also can take this to the underwriting community and say, 15, 16, there was a bit of frequency and severity here. And things, maybe they hired a fleet manager, maybe put some cameras in the vehicles, maybe put some telematics together, and both frequency and severity year over year have really started to decrease. What we can also do from here is exactly like Tyler said, is add a benchmark. So we can do what the loss ratios look like year over year, which I don't know that we've talked about that yet at all in our podcast series, but that's the dollars that are retrieved by the insurance carrier over the dollars that are paid out. And it gives the insurance carrier an idea of how risky from a claim cost perspective a company is. And what we can do is show what the loss history looks like year over year from a loss ratio perspective and what the industry average is for that region. And that's information that the carriers can get to us, the NRCA can get to us, each state's roofing association helps us to compile. And those are some things on the auto, because like Tyler said, when we started and what he spoke about last week or the previous podcast is on the experience mod, that's an industry standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
That goes for the entire country, NCCI promulgates those experience mods, but we don't have anything like that for the auto and for the general liability. So we use some kind of end around ways to give our clients an idea of where they're trending in comparison with the remainder of the industry. This next page here.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was just saying, I know when I was looking at these as a contractor, what was most important when you get looking at this data is you're correct, whether it was cameras, a new safety program, fleet manager, it shows me as the manager, owner, or whatever my position is that I'm dealing with this, that my trend is in a good position, right? I'm starting to see, as they say, the fruits of my effort. So that's really, really good. That's where these are important. So if this was going in the reverse trend, right, if this was opposite, then it would tell me, hey, we were doing something right, but something's wrong now. Maybe it is just freakish accidents that you couldn't avoid, which can happen, or possibly you don't have a good program in place or somebody's not doing what they're doing. So I just wanted to kind of kick that in from the perspective of the other side looking at this.
That's a great point.
John, it's one of the exciting things in our job is I like to deliver. Sometimes we have clients ask us, hey, if we're going to invest in showing our clients where their investment dollars are going, because getting a return on investment in putting dollars into a safety program, cameras, telematics, whatever it may be, it's a lot of times unquantifiable till after the fact. These help us take a look back at a downward trending loss ratio, if that's the case, and share with the underwriting community that, hey, over the last 2 years, since you've invested in these cameras, you've had a decrease of 30% in your loss ratio. For that, we're presenting a 30% decrease on this year's renewal. A lot of clients ask, hey, if we invest in this, what are the savings going to be from the insurance carriers? Well, unlike a personal auto quote where there's going to be stock 5% discounts for certain things, it's not always the case with a commercial fleet. It's more of a risk profile as a whole. So these help us also be able to show our clients kind of the fruits of their labor and where it was trending and kind of get a return on investment in their safety programs.
That is absolutely true. That's a really good point. There's a lot of our clients ask, there is not a hard discount the way that personal lines automobile has. But when we look year over year at how things trend, typically we see a pretty significant downward trend, which allows, from a qualification perspective, allows us to qualify for more competitive insurance programs, or there's an actual rate decrease over the course of a few years. And as a company starting out, certainly the very beginning, you kind of have to take what you can get from an insurance perspective. There are markets that serve their place for roofing contractors that are just starting out. But as you get larger and grow and scale, the qualification of better-in-class insurance programs really helps to develop a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And these are the ways that we can help get those things accomplished.
And as a contractor, don't forget, if you're dropping from 13 incidents in 1 year down to 1, you're going to be saving that out-of-pocket deductible on every single repetitive instance. So there's a lot of benefits in working with the plan.
Yes, absolutely. This next page here, we do this for general liability and workers' comp again. Again, know that most folks tuning into our podcast today are just getting started. But what we can do is, as new business units start to open up, is split out the losses by each of the business units. And what we do here is, it's not to crucify those that are underperforming. It's just to be able to lift them up, to identify them, to help allocate a little bit more resources to each of them. Now, we have some clients that would look at this and say, location 1 is absolutely our busiest location. So it stands to reason that they have 50% of the total claim frequency, which is the number of claims, and 48% of the severity, which is the costs of the claims. And what we can do from there is split out how many power units are, devoted to each of the locations, or how many miles that are driven by each of the location, to be able to kind of benchmark that against each of our company's average per power unit costs from an insurance perspective.
Helps hold each business unit accountable.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
So we can also do by month of the year. See this April here, and John, you had mentioned this on the early summary page. This big spike in severity, one claim accounts for 56 of the 64% of claim severity in April. So we're able to kind of break out those outlier claims and be able to say, without this claim, things don't look so bad. This may be a fluke incident or something like that. And with auto specifically, one accident can have multiple claim pieces. So we typically take that information, and although on the surface it looks like April's a really bad month, we can dive in and see, is that one claim, is that multiple claims? Typically we'll see a little bit of a frequency and severity pop in the summertime, because naturally, our contractors are a little bit busier at that time. Driving more miles means more opportunities for incidents to occur. And in those months, what we say to the safety teams is maybe, have a little bit more of an emphasis on driving and defensive driving. Maybe help to get some guys defensive driving courses or safe driving courses, spend some more time on driving in the months that we see more frequency. And days of the week kind of works the same way. I don't want to spend too much time here, but we see a whole lot of Thursday and Friday. And I would say, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's because folks are, flying home to get to dinner with the missus, or want to take the kids to the beach for the weekend, or whatever the case is. And again, it's just an opportunity to help coach.
Yes.
Those that we have as clients, as drivers and things.
Yeah, and there's a reason we look at months. Some people may be asking, hey guys, what's the significance of looking at day of the week, the month? And we'll see it a little bit more on the work comp side, which we'll get into as well. But I mean, just to draw, and the reason we look at it, John, is just to draw any type of and try to identify any trends that we see possible. So from a work comp perspective, if a company's not offering health insurance, may see a little bit of an uptick on claims that come in on Monday. So you got to ask yourself, hey, are some of these guys getting hurt on the weekend, coming in and filing some fraudulent work comp claims? And there's a reason we look at it, and it's just to help identify trends from a month perspective on the auto side. Are there more snowbirds down here? The road's busier. Do we need to make that a month of awareness in the office in our defensive driver training classes and really draw awareness to it in some of the spring months or whatever it may be? So that's why we're looking at some of these other things and work comp. We're getting into types of injuries, how they're occurring. But again, this whole purpose, John, is to identify trends and to hold others accountable. And we use this info to then share it with others, because if we're seeing an uptick in anything in the industry, we want to share it with our other clients as well.
Absolutely. Next page here, and again, we do this kind of auto, general liability, and work comp. So this is the last page, I think, on the auto side of things. This we feel like is really impactful because it shows, out of this $116,000 that ABC Roofing has had in total incurred losses over the last 5 years, what do these losses really look like? So we have 19% of the frequency, as well as go for insured vehicle, rear end, other vehicle, and natural disaster. I would venture to say that natural disaster, there's not a whole lot that a contractor can do to keep a natural disaster from occurring. But with insured rear ending other vehicle, can we assign the drivers that have multiple claims a little bit of extra training, extra coaching opportunities? Is there ways to spend some time in toolbox talks with driver safety in mind? And this side also, on the severity side of things, we can see frequency, and frequency begets severity. So we show how many claims occurred by each of the root causes, and then what those costs look like.
And also helping so we look at the insured vehicle, rear ending another vehicle. What does that show us? If there's an uptick in that, is it distracted driving? That's what first comes to mind for us. Do you need to look at putting in a cell control policy that limits the driver's access to their cell phones, or whatever we can do to help look at this data and correct it? Just helps us, again, identify some trends.
We see on the auto side of things, there's certainly risk inherent in the roofing industry, right? A lot of things that can't be engineered out. It's just a risky world to be operating in. But I would say that the exposure to the largest claims, the probability of seeing $1 million work comp claim, pretty small. General liability, a little bit greater in a probability perspective, but by far the largest exposure for any roofing contractor, whether they're starting out 10 years in business, 50 years in business, or it's like a 6th generation, been around forever company, is on the auto side of things. And these insured vehicle, rear end, other vehicles, where we're at fault, anything that we're at fault, that little rear end, whatever that looks like, whether the person was going 5 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, or 50 miles an hour, those are literally just spinning a roulette wheel on where those auto settlements are going to end up. This is by far the largest exposure for any roofing contractor, and anything that we can lift up from a trending perspective on the auto to just reduce the claims by 10% or maybe 15%, it keeps us out of that lottery of hitting the wrong person on the wrong day and having that person get a lawyer to go after the policy limits.
Very significant severity exposure with the auto is what it is.
I agree, and you can guarantee that the other side is already pulling the texting records of the driver before you know what's going on. And if you watch the news, and you're correct, I think this is probably the one has the greatest threat of putting you out of business, not only corporately, but also personally. It'll pierce the corporate blanket right on through to the personal once it goes above the limits. It's been done in court awards before, and it's not uncommon to see $5, $10+ million, all the way up to near $100 million settlements now on auto, policy liabilities through accidents with vehicles, for sure, on commercial vehicles.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, as a roofing contractor just starting out, I think what's most important to to consider here is that every vehicle that gets on that road is an opportunity for a lawyer to get inside your company. And
Yep.
it makes the loss control on the auto side of things so very significant, and making sure that you're protected from an insurance perspective, because as you're working hard to build your company, there are lawyers out there that are working hard to tear them back down. And that's just a sad reality of the situation as it stands currently. So we can also do it for general liability, and we'll spend a few moments here. This page was not on the auto, but what we do here is this is our total loss development. So we take the losses over the last 5 years, currently valued, which are these blue bars, and look at it compared to this time last year. And what we do with this is we're able to say, okay, there's been $178,000 in loss development, which means dollars that weren't accounted for this time last year, and be able to see, okay, has there been some settlements on the general liability side? The claims that were active, have they closed out at higher incurred values? Are they back in court and they had to be reopened? You know, things of that nature. And we certainly, on the general liability side, see some severity pops here. So all these dates of loss, we're able to identify, you know, of this 425 grand, chances are that a majority of that comes from this $220,000 claim. So I just mentioned settlements and reopening and things. So when a claim happens, the adjuster gets it and they say, okay, we've seen claims like this before, and we think that this will probably close out at $50,000. So when we look at it here, we have one claim and it would be open, and it would be for $0 paid and $50,000 in total reserves, which would give you a $50,000 total incurred value. And as that claim matures and as that develops, you know, the $50,000 starts to move over to the paid column, and that reserve number is truly just an adjuster's best guess. It's a snapshot in time of what that claim may close out for. And where we see this loss development happen is if that guess wasn't completely, well, I mean, at the time it was accurate, but certainly, you know, other information starts to file in. If there's lawyers involved, things of that nature, sometimes that'll bump the values up. So these reserves, we like to say, you know, this particular ABC Roofing has $531,000 in reserves at this current moment, but we do this in January, and if we come back in June and pull these losses so that we're able to put these together, that number can go to 2 million. And you know, it just comes down to what those losses are doing on the back end. This is just our best effort to put all this information together, get it in front of our clients, because certainly they have more you know, important things to be worrying about: driving revenue, making sure that their backlog's full, doing things to keep their business going. They're not always looking at what these claims emails are coming in and what these settlement values are for. And this is our way of putting kind of an X-ray to the information. Next page here is very similar to for auto. It's the root causes. So we see here slip, trip, and falls on the actual premises. Property damage would be something you know, the contractor did that caused issues within the home that they're working on or business that they're working on. And we can look at both frequency and severity and break that down a little bit further to show which events are causing the uptick in the frequency or the severity. And we can do that all across all lines. And again, like Tyler said, and what's most important is just that we're trying to put as much information in front of our contractors so that we can help suggest maybe tightening up some of the policies in terms of what jobs are being taken. You know, some of these claims, say this $220,000 claim, that's going to elevate the insurance burdens on the general liability perspective. So when you look at how much that job costs to do and how much profit is being made off that job, what's that job worth it? You know, what's it going to take to bring back in from a revenue perspective to cause a pre-tax net kind of intake that will allow for this claim to not impact the profitability of the contractor. We feel that that's super eye-opening when we're able to break it down by, if we're looking at this and John, you're like, ah, crap, you know, that job was a $5,000 repair job and it cost $200,000 in general liability claims. And I had to come out of pocket 10 grand for the deductible, and my GL is going up 15% next year. It really makes you take a harder look at what kind of jobs you're securing, what the margins look like.
Absolutely.
Because these are hard costs. And then we spent some time last week on the experience mod, but just in general terms, this is one of the benchmarking kind of analyses that we're able to do. So the 1.0, and John, you're doing a great job of the 0.61 experience mod for 2020. We go a little bit more in depth on the experience mod, but don't want to spend any time here. Here's where really want to hone in a little bit. So same information from auto and GL, but we can go a little bit deeper to show the root cause of the claims for work comp. And with repetitive motion, certainly it's a large net that we're casting with that name. But those are things that, we look at ergonomics and we look at, are folks properly lifting things? Are there ways that we can make our procedures a little easier on our employees' bodies so that they're not getting these kinds of claims? And fall from elevation, any roofing contractor getting into the business spends a great deal of time with fall protection, but some of these other things, they're really simple fixes. Whether, it comes down to procedural, or it comes down to the way the job sites are set up, or if a safety plan's in place per each job. These are the kinds of things that we can look at from a work comp perspective. See what types of injuries are most frequent, what types of injuries are most severe, where the injured body parts are. If there's a lot of eye claims, can we get the guys some safety glasses? Or if it's a lot of lacerations to hands and wrists, are we wearing the proper work attire every day? Certainly there are things that can't be engineered out, but if there is anything like that is occurring, from a frequency or severity perspective, are there things that we can do from a loss control perspective to help mitigate those issues a little bit?
Yeah, this is great information. I can tell you, when I was in the contracting side, we'd look at information like this, and as a contractor, you say, okay, so what do you do with this? So example, we had a tremendous amount of back and core injuries going on, very similar to what it shows here, maybe a little bit more on the roofing side always, but we found out that a lot of it would be preventable if you were properly warmed up and properly stretched. So I know if you're doing, a new construction, a lot of people go out there, it's mandatory. The general contractor will make you do a stretch and flex. But what we started to do, noticed it was high in our service crews, right? So service crews aren't going to run into that. So what we did was every single morning, service crews would come together before they load and get their trucks together and go out. We'd have our own in-house little stretch and flex, right? To 10 minutes tops. That cut these accidents down by half. So again, you're managing your own company by the information that you're getting out of these type of reports. So they're very, very valuable.
Absolutely.
And Sean, one thing as most of the people tuning in as an incubator program, a lot of new companies we understand that there's staffing, there's backlog, there's production focused when you're starting out. It's how do I make money, but it's also preserving the dollars at the beginning at first. So it's not to be the negative insurance guys to bring up that you're not going to have seen the claims initially, nor is it going to be as much of a concern to you at the time if you haven't seen dollars paid out. And I see a lot of times, even when there are a few incidents, that they may not have paid out, a little fender bender may have paid out for $1,000, as in most cases it should on the auto. But frequency leads to severity. And every single one of those fender benders, even if they only paid out $1,000 and your performance isn't that bad, another one could turn into $50,000 or $500,000, because we've seen those as well. The fender benders we've seen them go for policy limits. And so the purpose is just to help as you're starting out, because once these things start to happen and claims start to occur, they sit with you for 5 years. So it's a matter of getting out in front of it, helping contractors as they're starting out, gaining understanding and importance. Because once you get up to a company of this size, where you are having 15 claims over a 5-year period and data to go off of, review and draw emphasis to where whatever business unit it might be, and hold others accountable, it's a matter of getting those things in place first before it's too late and before it starts affecting your premium dollars. So that's really what we like to draw awareness, and for those starting out, to help gain an understanding of when you get to this point, that these things are something very much that you can pay attention to, as it's one of your top 5 expenses and one of the only controllable expenses.
Yeah, and again, it's not the big bad insurance, it's not the big bad anything. Look, I'm new starting out. maybe in my first year, when it's all said and done, I'm going to net $100,000 profit after everything's paid. I don't want to give half of that away paying out claims, which is how you have to look at that as a contractor. So even though you may be starting out and not have a lot of data, that's why we talked about in the beginning, where you'd have some, basic guidelines to look at, saying, hey, back injuries are high, auto accidents, just like we've talked about here today. So start putting those programs into your company from day one when you start out, because it pays off. So I think there's been a lot of, and I know we have a little more to go through, but there's been a lot of valuable information that has been, revealed here today. To, if you are new starting out, you're seeing numbers that you may not have realized, saying, wow, this is higher than I would have ever thought. So you can take this information and start to put preventative into your company. And the whole goal is not to give that, that pot of gold at the end that you've worked so hard for, to give it back to someone else. And that's what happens when you have these claims.
Yes. John, you just brought up a great point. We can also break things down by tenure and employee age and see, ways that we can help train our aging workforce, or jump into guys that are just starting out the trainings, and we see a little bit of complacency a couple years later, things like that. But you just brought up a great point, and I think probably end here and jump back just to join by video. As a roofing contractor just starting out, I think in this incubator program, there's a really rare opportunity to look at the pitfalls of other contractors and speak to folks that speak to roofing contractors every day. It is significantly easier to start your company with a culture and build a culture of accountability and safety focus than it is to 10 years down the line realize that there's so many claims that our insurance costs are out of control, and have us come in at that point and try and put protocols in place. Because at that point, you got a lot of guys that have been there for a long time, and the response is going to be, we've never done this like that before. Why would we start now? Things have worked so far. Why would we change it now? And from this incubator program, if you're able to put the policies in place to help protect each and every employee, whether they're driving, whether they're on the roof as an employee, or whether you're taking the right jobs from the sales guys, and have that permeate through the company from the very first day a contractor steps on a job, an employee steps into the office, that will pay off leaps and bounds in the long run. And it's a lot easier to start the company that way and move into the culture of accountability than it is to come back a couple years later and try it again.
Oh yeah, I always look at it this way. If you start out the right path, you steer down really well. But if you've got to try, and I've had experience correcting these over the years, because I've been involved in companies that maybe, they've been around a while, or you have a lot of employees. I always say it's like trying to steer a super tanker in the middle of a canal. It takes a long, hard trip to do it. So do it early. I can't stress enough, as you just did, accountability, safety, culture, all that really matters. Do it as you start out. It's so much easier to keep doing it than it is to try to start it later.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So anything closing out today that you guys want to bring up?
Again, using this as an industry benchmark and helping to, because the title of this, right, is helping to using claims data to help identify trends in the industry, right? So taking this information, taking it back to your company, whether it be your own report card, which we call these performance reviews because it is a benchmark of your performance, or others, as we share with some of our other clients what we're seeing in the industry, to really get ahead of it, because this is not something that after the fact that you can go back and make corrections nor do you want to learn the hard way. So again, it's just staying on top of it and putting these things in protocols in place early on before these things occur, and using this other history to help identify the trends. So it's important. We feel it's important. That's why we share with our clients, sometimes quarterly, some of this data in their own report cards and performance reviews, so that they have an idea where they stand.
No, excellent advice.
I would just say in closing, John, that we're happy to help evaluate what safety protocols are in place. Like you had mentioned in the beginning, is there any way to benchmark somebody's, policies or safety practices? We're happy to get on the phone and just share things that we have available to us if it helps folks start the process early of developing a culture of safety, developing their loss control protocols, and help to bring the culture of accountability to every contractor on the podcast.
No, excellent. And again, you guys listening out there, this is so important. You're bound by law to carry insurance anyway. So what I mean by that is this is not a sales thing, right? But I'm telling you, as a contractor, find a good partner that you're going to have insurance anyways. It's like paying your taxes. You got to pay taxes. You want to get a good accountant. You want to have some great outside resources. And I can tell you this particular type of program we've talked about here today has more value than you can realize by watching this. I recommend you go back and watch this one a second time. There's that much packed in here. And that brings us to an end for today. Next month, we're going to be covering episode 5, which is, I believe, insurance, audit review, and consultation. Talk a little bit about preparing for your workman comp and your GL audits, and some strategies to reduce overcharges that can occur in audits. And you'd be surprised. That's like finding another small pot of gold when you get your audits done right. Again, this is all about adding into that bucket for you in the long run. So that being said, I want to thank you guys for joining us again today, and look forward to having our next episode next month. And to the audience out there, once again, thank you for joining, and we appreciate you listening every month.
Thank you very much, John.
Take care, everybody.
Bye now.